Hey y'all, I just finished building these built-in dining benches for our kitchen. This corner of the kitchen was really being underutilized and needed a major improvement. And these benches are going to be able to flip up to reveal a whole bunch of storage space inside for stashing cooking gadgets and dog food and paper towels and whatever extra stuff you got. And I mounted some pneumatic struts on the underside of each of the benches as well, so when you're closing them, nobody gets their fingers slammed. And I hooked up some LED strip lights inside with a motion sensor to light it all up when you lift up the bench tops. All right, let's get it going. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons if you like what you're seeing so I can keep making more content. Let's go. All right, let's start off with an inventory of all the wood you're gonna need for this project. I've got 8 pieces of 1x4 primed finger joint trim, 10 2x4s, 2 sheets of sanded plywood, and 1 sheet of MDF. You can see some 1x10s here as well, but those are actually for my next project, which is gonna be a built-in shelf that'll be located right next to this bench. After I spent some time mapping out exactly how to cut all of this wood with a minimal amount of waste, I set up a stop block at the miter table and got busy chopping. The 2x4s are a bit trickier because they do not always start out perfectly straight. They like to warp and can often be bowed or twisted, so I made sure to reserve the straightest boards for the longest pieces I need, and I set aside the crooked ones for shorter cuts to minimize their impact on the final product. The MDF here is for the inner shelves, and the sanded ply is for the outer walls, benches, and seat backs. And to cut these, I just lay the plywood on these 2x4 scraps on the floor, measure, and then rip it down with this Kreg track saw. Then I cut these strips to length with my circular saw crosscut jig, and then I ripped the final couple boards down to the correct width on the table saw. Here's the final collection of everything cut to size. And here's Venkman the poodle, who is quite impressed. Before we can put together the base frame though, I'm gonna have to clear out some space in the kitchen. We'll have to relocate this freezer to the garage, and to make that work, I'm gonna have to install an electrical outlet where I want the freezer to go. And I did this by tapping into an existing outlet on the other side of the wall and then snaking the wires in between the studs. Now, if you don't feel comfortable doing electrical work, it's best that you contact a licensed electrician for this step. And I'm not a licensed electrician, so I'm not gonna talk you through all the steps here. But always be sure to turn the power off the breaker box for any area that you need to work on. And now that that's out of the way, it's time to remove the baseboards from this corner of the kitchen. And this is going to allow us to mount the new frame up against the wall and directly into the studs. And to do this, you'll want to first take a utility knife and cut through the caulk all the way around the baseboards, and then use a pry bar to pull it off of the wall. I always use a thin sheet of plywood for leverage. This way you don't bust through the sheetrock with your pry bar. And then you want to take a paint scraper and scrape off any remaining strips of caulk and just try to smooth out your workspace. Now we can get started on the base frame, and here's a digital rendering of what I'm up to, complete with dimensions. I'll show one of these for every layer along the way. Now this base frame will be made up of 2x4s, which I'm putting together with 2.5-inch construction screws that I'm drilling right into the end grain of the cross pieces. It's Also important to install this piece by piece in its final location so the final product matches the contours of the actual floor. I'm anchoring these frames into the wall studs with 3-inch screws. So you want to locate and mark the location of all your wall studs if you want this to be secured to the wall. Alright, there's the completed foundation. And the next layer is the MDF shelving, which is cut to the same size as the 2 base frames. I secured these shelves to the frame with 1 3/4 inch finish nails. This finish nail gun is attached by a hose to a little pancake compressor that I have in the garage. And the outer walls are coming up next, and I'm going to use finish nails on those as well, so I'm just going to let this play out for a minute here. Alright, here's the inside frame, and these digital sketches you see here are not entirely complete. I ended up adding more cross pieces along the edge of each frame to give more support to the bench seats. I used a lot of pocket holes to secure these pieces, which went down into the MDF shelving and then up into the cross pieces on the outer walls too. And I used 3-inch construction screws here again to secure the frame to the studs. And I need to put in some rails along the back for the hinges of each bench top to grip onto. And I also had to cut some spacers with 1/2-inch MDF to match the depth of the frame. The bench tops themselves are the most complex pieces in this whole project. There's just a lot of moving parts, but I'll walk you through it step by step. Now for the top surface, first I used finish nails to attach these strips of 1x4 trim along the back. These are going to support the seat backs, which are going to sit at an angle along the wall. I wanted to cut a rounded edge to the front of each bench top, and I did this on the router table using 3/8-inch roundover bit. I ran it along one entire edge, then flipped the whole bench upside down and did the underside, and then I sanded the final edge by hand. And then I ripped the 2x4 in half and used these pieces to add another layer of support underneath each bench. After all this, I drilled the holes for the cabinet hinges, and to do this I used yet another Kreg jig. And this one has a Forstner bit. That's the standard hole diameter for cabinet hardware, and that has a stop collar and a built-in fence so you can set all the correct depths for these holes. I also went ahead and painted the spots where the hinges were going to attach now, so I won't have to worry about detail painting around these later. And then I lined the bench tops and drove the screws to attach the hinges. And these hinges are inset and designed to not attach to a face frame, so they will leave about 1/8 of an inch between the bench itself and the seat back. Don't get overlay hinges for this project or face frame hinges either. I'll leave an affiliate link to these in the description below so you can see what I'm talking about. And here I decided to add a 2x2 piece of wood along the back to prevent it from sagging back there. Our next step is to attach the outer trim. And there are a lot of different options you could follow here, but I tried to match the design of the rest of our kitchen. Earlier this year, we did a big renovation project and added shaker style cabinets. So the trim pattern you're gonna see here is my attempt to match that shaker style. Here are the dimensions I came up with for the seat backs, which are not really anything too particular, but were really based upon how much plywood I had left. Then I calculated an angle of 101 degrees for the seat, and I cut a beveled edge into the bottom of the seat back to make it sit flat on that little shelf. I think these came out pretty strong, but looking back, I really should have used solid wood for these triangles instead of plywood, because it would have given the nails something much stronger to grab onto. And then I had to remove the bench seats one last time so I could paint everything, and these just clip off at the hinges. Now this summer when we did our big kitchen renovation, we chose the bare color called dark navy to contrast with our maple butcher block countertops. And we went with a satin finish. So that's what you see here on these benches as well. And I think it looks great. Our kitchen and floors are so light that we needed something to contrast with that brightness and something a little bit more dark. And that's why we went with this dark navy here. And after everything dried, it was time to bring the bench tops back on and attach the finishing touches. I added these pneumatic struts to make the seats super soft closing, and then painted the support trusses. Added these LED strip lights with a motion sensor that turns on when you lift up the seat. Hid the wires. Attached this stick-on felt for protection, and that's it. So there you have it, a built-in banquette with flip-top seats, gas struts, and LED motion sensor lighting. That's all for now. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe if you feel like it, and don't forget to click the like button if you liked it, and the dislike button if you didn't like the video. See you next time.
Did we redo that?
Yeah, start it over again.